that we're pitching them. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back, and I apologize in advance. I will hopefully be able to correctly pronounce this by the end of the 119th Congress, but Mr.
Subramanyam.
Yeah,
Subramanyam.
you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello. To reiterate what many of my colleagues have already said, as someone who represents 34,000 federal workers, many of whom are my friends and neighbors, I can promise you that these federal workers are smart and dedicated professionals who would probably get paid more working in the private sector, but choose to serve their country. And so I think if you want to attract and retain great people in our military, at our agencies, and get more for our tax dollars, I don't think vilifying them is going to help us attract and retain great talent in our federal workforce. And some of the rhetoric I'm hearing today, there's this assumption that teleworking federal employees are not working at all. That's simply not true. And I know many of them in my community who sometimes they work 3 days a week in person, but I make that commute myself actually every day. It's about 45 minutes. I paid $35 in tolls this morning, and many of them have to pay that same amount. So it's expensive to come in. It's actually very difficult. It's a lot of time on the road that they could be spending working instead. And so I would ask Governor O'Malley, when you've had telework policies in place, is there any evidence of a significant drop-off in employee performance based on the administration's adoption of it?
No. In fact, Congressman, we actually increased productivity this year by more on a year-over-year basis than we have at any time since 2012. And may I just show you this quick map? I don't mean to bite into your time, but the ALJ level hearings are where people with disabilities go in front of a judge. It's an on-the-record approach. Before COVID, all of this was in person. After COVID and the changes we had to make, we now have bandwidth on dockets all over the country. And you can see on the right-hand side, that's where we began the year. Anything in dark green was 270 days. We haven't been at 270 days to process an ALJ hearing in 30 long years. In just 1 year, you see the dark green on that map. That's because of the ability of the ALJs, oftentimes other people that are called to testify, like the vocational rehab people, can all be right there. Were it not for that ability and the agency's ability to monitor that and do it well, we would never have gotten back with the staffing reductions Congress has imposed on us to a 30-year low and the fastest average processing time at the ALJ level that we've had in 30 years. That's the most compelling case.
So it sounds like telework actually made it more productive.
Yes, sir. Telework and the internet and advances in, the recording and everything else about it. Yes,
and it sounds like telework also made the Social Security Administration a more attractive place to work. Is that correct? And easier to retain
honestly, Congressman, the attrition rate at Social Security and the demoralization there because of the rising, could you put that back up on the easel, this one? Because of the rising workloads, the attrition rate was about the worst in the agency when I was asked to go there. Okay. In fact, in the teleservice centers that answer the 800 number, it was a 22% attrition rate. I can tell you, though, Congressman, I am deeply concerned that some would like to break this fragile agency, and that would be really, really bad for the 72 million Americans, seniors, people with disabilities, people on SSI. We turned it around in a much better direction, thanks to the good people there. But you could very well break Social Security.
And I heard a lot about the DC and Northern Virginia economy. I'm so glad to hear that. I'm glad everyone on both sides of the aisle cares about it, so that when there's an effort to move agencies out later on, I'll hold you to it. But I would ask Congressman, Mr. Chairman Davis, if we were to remove or fire federal workers in this region, you mentioned devastating our economy. Would that devastate our economy?
It depends how many you're talking about, where you're going. I mean, massive firings is going to, whether it's the private sector or public sector, is going to have an effect.
Do you think moving agencies away from our region, as proposed by the incoming administration, would be good for our local economy?
Well, I don't know what they proposed. Even moving the FBI out of Washington, D.C. has gotten a lot of controversy within the region between Maryland and Virginia and D.C. So anytime you move anything, it's going to have economic consequences.
I think moving away agencies from our region would be a self-imposed recession. And I think firing federal workers en masse would be a self-imposed recession for Northern Virginia. So I love the concern for Metro. I love the concern for businesses in our region. I'm looking forward to having that discussion and solving that. But the rhetoric coming from the administration is really bad for our local economy. I yield my time.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a UC request.
Sure.
I would ask unanimous consent that an article from Governor Exec on the Ernst report documenting telework abuse be entered into the record.